Hello from Organic Blooms in South Gloucestershire. I'm Jo Wright. I'm going to be talking to you for the next half hour or so about how British organic growers might meet the rising demand for organic cut flowers. It's an amazing opportunity that you may want to consider diversifying into because there's at the moment the demand for British sustainable cut flowers is outstripping supply. So we're growing here in South Gloucestershire on grade 3 former arable land. We're probably only growing on about 3 to 4 acres. We've got 9 altogether, and we are running a business with probably about 12 staff here. We also operate as a social enterprise, so we train people in horticulture and we employ them, people who may not get opportunities in the mainstream market due to support needs. So our business is based around sales to the public, sales online, locally, and a contract also with Able & Co and weddings, events, and some corporate clients. We grow, as you can see, we're growing in kind of beds, allotment type beds. We've got in this area 106 beds, which help with obviously harvesting, and they help with our rotation planning. So we obviously you can't do a true rotation like with veg. There's not enough different family groups, but there are certain species that we wouldn't grow together or successionally. You can see we're just planting bulbs at the moment, which we try and keep in as perennials where we can, but we might over sow them. So this is some narcissi here. We'll cover those with a mulch, a very thick mulch. We're on a clay, so we tend to try and raise our beds rather than dig down. So we will then probably seed a crop, a hardy annual crop, or when they finished flowering, over the top, just to use beds multiple times. We might have 3 crops in a bed in a year, maybe 4. Does make it hard to fit in a green manure crop. We have a few green manure crops here, late ones, so we've got mustard over here, but generally we're using all our beds, so we don't tend to always have time for a green manure. We tend to have just rather grow a crop that would fill the gap. Like Phycelia we can actually harvest, but that's our mustard just coming up. So we grow varieties that are really low input. They tend to be derived from prairie and meadow plants actually. That's a bed of Sweet William already flowering, which is a bit worrying. So about 50% of what we're growing here is perennial. So we love the meadow and prairie varieties, as I said. You've got Helenium over here. Helenium and Rudbeckia are both prairie plants, along with Echinacea, which is over there, Eryngium, Echinops. The great thing about prairie and meadow plants is that their ability to survive drought, to survive grazing, which we get a bit of. As you can see, our cornflowers here were grazed overnight by rabbits. Achillea is another species we love. There's a bed of Achillea, also first year flowering perennial from seed, so we actually sowed that from seed. It's a great reliable cut flower, more of a filler, but really useful in a bouquet. So yeah, as I said, 50% probably of our species, of our cut flower varieties, are perennial. Reduces watering. Obviously it lengthens our rotation, and our ability to rotate becomes a bit trickier, because when you're cutting all the time, you actually don't need to lift and divide as frequently. So we might lift a bed of perennials every 5 to 7 years rather than 3 to 5 years, because you're cutting continually, so you're maintaining vigor that way. We do grow quite a lot of herb species as well. Calendula, here's lemon balm. Lemon balm is, we don't use that in bouquets, but we do use mint in bouquets. That's apple mint. We use peppermint as well in bouquets. You can see all my weeds now. not quite sure why there's a cone in the middle there. Another bed of Achillea. Obviously this is like not exactly the best time of year to see our place, but you're seeing it warts and all. Another species of Achillea here, the goldenrod. And then the things we love for couriering are things like these dried flowers, Helichrysum, becoming very popular nowadays, and it extends your season a lot because we can use them when we don't have anything fresh. Statice, I think I've passed a few beds of statice. Again, they travel so well when you're couriering, because it's not all about the growing. The growing is actually the easy bit. It's the getting to market, routes to market, and physically getting flowers to market in peak condition is one of the challenges of British flower growers. One of my favourite flowers, the Caucasian Scabias, just beautiful in a bouquet. We love the Ami family. This is Ami Visnaga. We have Ami Magus as well. Clary sage here. Feverfew's great in bouquets as a filler. Obviously we need foliage, so eucalyptus comes in handy. You can see that we've got willow in the background there. We use that for making wreaths. So that's a bit of a tour of what we've got. I'm going to take you into the tunnels now. But really, I'm here to talk to you about how accessible cut flower growing is, really. It's actually probably easier than veg growing because you're physiologically a stage before some of the fruiting varieties, and the inputs, as I said, are less. So if you're on a clay soil, I would never need to add nitrogen. We're using organic matter all the time, obviously, but obviously potassium can be a problem. Hasn't been yet here. We grow such a range that we're rotating, that we haven't had any nutrient or fertility issues. We don't grow anything ever so demanding. So our most demanding crop would be a zinnia crop, which we do grow in a tunnel, which I will take you to now. And we would use a comfrey feed for that. There's a bed of silver mint here. We use dill and fennel a lot in our bouquets, and obviously roses. We love the shrub rose, David Austin rose. It's relatively pest free, really hardy, beautiful, scented. Part of growing cut flowers, just like we've had to do with food, it's education. It's about showing the customer what is seasonal. It's about trying to educate around the ethics of flowers, grown not flown, etc. It's about a scented rose or sweet pea that only lasts for three to 4 days is still a very valuable flower. We don't need things to last 2 weeks necessarily to enjoy them. Here's our zinnia crop, just kept getting towards the end again. Zinnia is a great focal flower. It would be the replacement for a gerbera, really. You'd be using gerberas in Dutch floristry or imported flowers. But a zinnia is just amazing. Look at that for colour. Zinnias we tend to grow them in a tunnel, although my tunnel is very well ventilated at the moment. You can see, ripped by the storms. You tend to want vented sides in your tunnel for cut flower growing, and straight sides as much as possible. Anti-condensation, because you do get a lot of botrytis issues if you've got a lot of condensation on flowers. This is a basil, amazing. We use it as a foliage and a flower. And we are also using the taller tagetes. So obviously a lot of flowers have been adapted for bedding plants. We want the taller original varieties. This is geranium attar of roses, and great as a foliage. You wouldn't believe, but you can get, look at that stem length. That's perfect for a bouquet or a box of flowers, and the scent is incredible. It's just interesting. So I mean, cut flowers in the UK are just such a nice product. They sell themselves, they really do. Once people have had a decent quality bouquet or box of British cut flowers, they tend not to want to go back to imported supermarket flowers ever again. This is curly mint, again adds a bit of interest. Some nice straight stems there. You're seeing, as I said, everything warts and all at the moment. I didn't even look round to check what I'm showing you, but I'm sure it's all in order. So as I said, we do, yes, probably zinnias are the only thing we actually add a liquid feed, a comfrey feed, which we create ourselves. We do everything from transplants here. So we use a lovely modular tray that is really sturdy, that will last years and years. Obviously we're very aware of plastic usage within what we do. I'll show you where everything starts out. So we're still pricking out now in October hardy annuals, things like larkspur. We're doing first year flowering perennials as well. More Sweet William, the tail end of our Sweet William stock. We'll be putting stock into our tunnel for a really early crop. More Sweet William, Lupin, just not brilliant with Lupin. There's very few legume crops that you can grow as flowers. Sweet pea and Lupin are the two. You still can't do a decent rotation with them because they're not in the ground long enough to do a lot of nitrogen fixing. Well, Lupin is, but then it stays in the ground because it's very perennial. So it is hard to plan a true rotation. You've just got to go with the principle of deep-rooted, shallow-rooted things and fertility and pest build-up. But you can't do your families or your, root crops, allium crops, etc., because we just don't have enough of those. But so these are great, these modular trays. We do everything into modules first and transplant everything because we find that is the most effective way to get the spacings right and for ease of cutting and supporting. And we just have too many pests to do broadcasting of seed in this place. Bulbs are an issue within cut flower growing because it's very hard to get certified organic bulbs. We do have a wonderful supplier in Holland who we buy our tulips and our muscari. These are grape hyacinths from. Here we go, natural bulbs, certified organic bulbs, as you can see. They are at probably 5 or 6 times more expensive, so you just have to build that into your cost structure and make sure that you're not wasting them. And we have limited how many bulbs we do that with. We also try and get perennial bulbs so that if we can't find them organically, we can convert them in our soil. The problem with converting perennials or short-lived perennials is that by the time they're converted, they probably are reducing their life. Converting something like an orchard that takes 3 years to convert, you've still got a good productive lifespan after. Unfortunately, with some perennials, you might want to be replacing it after it's converted. So it's a slight issue within ornamental organics. But I'm just walking you to our bigger tunnel here. So ornamental organics, brand new emerging market. People have changed from, not changed, they've moved on. They've understood food, they've understood the value of purchasing sustainable, organic, local, and they've said, well, what about the rest of our lifestyle? And people are starting to look at all their other purchases. People haven't even got flowers on their radar, but are starting to ask those questions. This Valentine's Day and the previous one, we normally put on our Instagram feed or our Facebook feed a picture of a rose in February, what it really looks like in the UK. A nice framework of dormant branches, and it does spark a lot more debate nowadays. It's a complex issue because we don't want to ruin whole markets. I mean, the Kenyan flower Oh, that was just a rabbit. The Kenyan flower industry is built all around Valentine's Day roses, but we do want to say there is some, there are alternatives. We need to think about the impact of a flower grown in Kenya on pollution in Lake Naivasha. There's all sorts of chemical usage on flowers. Flowers are heavily sprayed crop when they're imported because there is no regulation on non-food crops. They don't want pests to be brought into the country, so they do spray them, much less regulated than food. So it is definitely an issue, but it's not black and white. Carbon footprints. Growing a crop in Holland or in the south of England in a heated tunnel, a heated greenhouse, may not have a lesser carbon footprint, but it's about asking the questions. Again, we're seeing the tunnel is not at its best, but we're starting with our spring crops in here. So we've got Sweet William here, the little crop of dill, the end of some zinnias here. This will be where we put all our anemones and ranunculus. And here's a bed of wallflower, actually, which we do tend to use. Antirrhinums that are considered a half-hardy annual, but we've overwintered ours in the past few years, and they've been amazingly strong-stemmed. Antirrhinum is a classic cut flower, but beautiful. We don't avoid things that are on the market already, but the way we mix our flowers. Here's the apple mint, which is great. We use flowers of chive, we use flowers of sage. Here's the statice I was talking about, the dried flower. Very useful in a bouquet. And we're even growing alstroemeria, which is not our favourite because it reminds us too much of what you might see everywhere. But actually it's a very useful flower for vase life. And if you get a nice range of colours and mix them well, they're a great flower to grow. All the different colour range. You can produce them in a tunnel, get lovely stem lengths, and you can produce them for a very, I would say, potentially 8 months of the year, maybe 9, without heat. We don't heat our tunnels. That's lemon verbena. So that we've got the rest of our, I'm going to be developing some seed production in this field, so perennials and seed production, because the seed that is available to growers that is organic is really limited, and the gene pool of that seed resource is also limited. I'm noticing viruses in quite a lot of varieties because our genetic diversity is not brilliant. There's been no interest in breeding for ornamentals, particularly other than creating new colour ranges, etc., for gardeners. But I think things like the ammies, I'm definitely noticing a virus among the ammie family that I think is in the reduced diversity of the seed population, really. So we'd like to get into a bit of seed production, I think, here. So opportunities, there's a couple of ways that growers could get involved in cut flowers. One would be to just introduce a few species into their rotation. So if you're working field scale, you could do several crops on field scale. Sunflowers is an obvious one if you're automated. There are things like larkspur could be done field scale. You're looking though then for routes to market. You could do stocks in tunnels. I'm thinking of things that you can cut quite easily, pretend that you're not cutting continually. So if you want a no fuss approach, or a bulb crop would be your other option as well. So it would be, you could put an allium crop in, which was quite expensive, or a narcissi crop. So if you wanted to just try it, see how it compared income wise, it would be probably worth looking at something that could be automated at field scale and picked or cut, not all at once because that's almost impossible, but cut not too frequently. If you're looking at things like cosmos, you're like coming back to that again and again and again, and it's not really a viable crop unless you are just popping around continually making bouquets. So the other approach is to do a full range of crops like we do, and to make mixed bouquets, mixed boxes, and add the value on the farm. That can work brilliantly, but you do need to have a bit of knowledge about the market that you're serving. You need to have some floristry skills. Don't have to be in-house, but you need to be guided by florists and what they want and the market that is available. And that is the key thing really, is at the moment routes to market are quite limited, and the routes to market that exist tend to be alongside veg. Now when flowers are sold alongside vegetables, they don't get the premium price that they could get. You probably all have been there at market stalls selling veg, selling your flowers alongside, and you'll get £5 for a bunch. You might get a bit more in Stroud, where it's a very buoyant market, but realistically those same flowers packaged in a different way in a different setting could get you 15, 20, £30. So realizing what you've got as a cut flower crop is quite important. It is a high value crop, and then marketing it appropriately really into the gifting market is the best way to get the money for your flowers. But if you're supplying the gifting market, you definitely need some floristry skills. People during lockdown really did love having just boxes of stems. That doesn't require a lot of knowledge, but the whole cutting and conditioning for quality is really important. It takes a bit of time to learn how to maintain vase life, or life in a box for couriering. We've taken years actually as growers. I was a grower before I grew organic flowers, and I had to actually learn quite a lot around, probably it's not so much the growing for straight stems is important, but it's all about vase life with this product. I know that is the case with veg as well, and fruit, but British cut flowers don't necessarily cold store brilliantly. It is about the time that you cut it. It's about stripping leaves off stems. It's about having them in water overnight. It's about so many things, and that if you're doing 1 or 2 or 3 crops, that's great. If you're working with up to 70 different species, it is quite a steep learning curve. But that's why the part of the solution to more growers getting involved could well be this working together to supply to a central packing location, where we're supplying stems in water, and somebody else is perhaps putting together products or boxes of stems. What I'd like to see us taking on, I shouldn't talk about other brands, but there are some very well-known subscription brands around at the moment for flowers. They're not all necessarily as ethical as perhaps an organic flower might be. A lot of them are still imported in these subscription boxes, letterbox flowers, etc. I would love to see UK growers offering a sustainable range for consumers who really want to know how their flowers are grown and where they're coming from. So we're almost back to the start. I'm going to show you into our Floristry Studio, where the value gets added. As I said, it's a flower crop is not necessarily hard to grow. It's making the money out of it and adding the value that is important. Also the continuity of cropping. We can now supply flowers in some shape or form for almost 12 months of the year. We rely on narcissi in the off season. We do a bit of forcing of bulbs, but not with heat, just in our tunnels. We've got sometimes anemones from February, then ranunculus and Sweet William, and then we've got allium. So it's all about planning. Just as important as rotation is about planning the continuity of cropping, and this is where the money is made basically, is in this added value aspect. So this is a pick. What are we, the 12th of October? We've been hanging on for dear life, hoping there wasn't a frost for the event that we've got coming up tomorrow and the next day, because obviously we can't protect against frost with dahlias. But the dried range that I was talking about up here, that can help fill in any gaps. And there you go. So there is a massive opportunity for people who want to diversify, because as I've said, the demand is there, the interest is there from the consumer. It's just about how we work together to find easier routes to market, to introduce crops into existing enterprises. 1 or 2 flower crops on their own don't necessarily work unless you do it as a pick your own. That's an option. But I would say you need to make any kind of gift bouquet, you need 3 flowers, 2 foliages, and you've got to look at having those for the majority of the year, so as a continuum. So I think, although it's challenging, I think it's a lovely challenge to have. I didn't go into why we bothered to do it organically, a non-edible enterprise. We feel that the onus is on us as producers of a luxury crop, that it is even more our responsibility to look at to use our resources wisely, to be low input, because luxury crops should not be costing the planet. And actually there's an element where if you really knew how some cut flowers are grown, you wouldn't find them beautiful at all because of the cost to the planet and to people growing them. So I will leave you with that thought, and hope to hear from some of you in the future. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.